Eagle River Watershed Council is the only nonprofit organization, or really the only entity, that is exclusively focused on keeping the rivers and streams of Eagle County healthy. Since 2004, we have been a donor-supported organization that monitors, restores, protects, and advocates for the Eagle and Upper Colorado rivers and their tributaries. Eagle County has 55 miles of the Upper Colorado River flowing within our borders, from about Radium to the start of Glenwood Canyon. In regards to the Grizzly Creek Fire, the primary stream impacts do fall within Garfield County. However, impacts from the fire and firefighting will be felt directly within Eagle County and on our streams. And more importantly, watersheds and rivers have no awareness of political boundaries or organizational jurisdictions. We view our rivers and watersheds as interconnected systems and want to see healthy rivers throughout. Eagle River Watershed Council is already working with our direct downstream partners, like Middle Colorado Watershed Council, as well as others, to make sure the impacts and potential impacts are addressed quickly. We created these films as we have questions about what lies ahead, both in impacts and in how we can take action. We thought that you might too, so join us as we get answers to these questions.
My name is Melanie Smith, and I'm the Development and Communications Coordinator at Eagle River Watershed Council. Thank you for joining us today for the first of our special video series relating wildfire and its effects on rivers and the riparian ecosystem. With us today is Bill Hoblitzell, a watershed scientist with Lotic Hydrological that Eagle River Watershed Council works with and has worked with on numerous projects in the past. Bill, we know that you've been a consultant of our Watershed Council for a number of years now, and you help us with everything related to hydrology and water quality. But can you share with us a little more of your background?
Yeah, so my role with the Watershed Council is we help put on the Water Quality Monitoring and Assessment Program, which is an annual program to help wrangle and analyze all the collaborative data gathering that happens all around the county and the watershed. So a lot of different agencies work here, and we want to make sure everybody is working together for common goals and not just operating in their silos.
Thanks, Bill. We know how important it is to have accessible and informative water quality data that we can use to let us know about emerging threats in our watershed. As the Grizzly Creek Fire continues to burn, currently over 27,000 acres in the Glenwood Canyon, we've been asking ourselves and our partners a lot of questions about what this means for the rivers and streams that run through and near the canyon. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not a fire specialist myself, but for better or worse, we've had a lot of fires in Colorado and elsewhere in the West, and there's a lot of accumulated knowledge available out there on wildfires and their impacts to our watersheds. The bad news is wildfires can have a huge impact on stream systems and watersheds, but the kind of silver lining of that is these natural systems are very resilient. They've been operating for millennia with this kind of disturbance happening around here, and they do bounce back from these things. One of the first things that happens right after fires is this huge disturbance rages through, and some places get burned more severely, some places don't get burned quite as bad, and that depends on the terrain, the vegetation, the wind conditions of that day, and so it doesn't touch the landscape equally. In really, really severely burned areas, you can get a hydrophobic layer on top of the soil that actually repels water for a little while after the fire comes through. You're also losing all your vegetation, which holds your soil in place over time. So one of the biggest risks right after a fire is actually flooding and soil loss and debris flows coming out of these watersheds if we get hit with a major monsoon event, a big thunderstorm, a heavy precipitation event. And that could be this season, or that could be next year or 2 years from now. As long as that area is still bare and denuded, it's at risk for this kind of event. So this is a picture that was taken over above Basalt in the Lake Christine burn area. But you can see if you get a heavy rain on this kind of surface, it's really easy just to trigger huge amounts of erosion and bring all that ash, that loose soil, and that sediment downstream and roll it right into the creek. So one of the first things that people will try to do after this fire comes through is try to do some severity mapping. And this is a picture of soil burn severity above basalt and El Jebel and the Lake Christine area. So this is one of the ways that people, your community leaders, will take a look at the data to try to prioritize where's the risk to our towns, to neighborhoods and outlying suburbs, which stream systems might be a greater risk, and what kind of road infrastructure, power infrastructure, water infrastructure, anything like that that we care about out on the landscape might also be at greater risk from debris flows, flooding, and that sort of thing. If one of these runoff events comes down, it has the capacity to completely choke out a stream. And what you're looking at in this picture is just ash and fine debris and silt that's run downstream from a burned area. And as you can see, it's covered up all of the sediments, the gravels, the cobbles, anything that kind of resembles our, our clean, clear, flowing natural mountain streams that we typically see around here. So in one of these events, the immediate impact is you can just lose everything in that section of stream. You can have a fish kill, you're smothering macroinvertebrate habitat, and even if you don't have this kind of all-out trashing of the stream, you may also just have impacts to your spawning gravels for your native fish and that sort of thing. And over time, as the stream systems are resilient, they can move this stuff downstream, but it can take anywhere from 1, 3, 5, maybe 10 years really to push all this stuff out. So this tends to be a bigger problem for small streams. So the upper reaches of Grizzly Creek, No Name, if this fire were to jump in the top end, Sweetwater or Deep Creek, we might be worried about these kind of issues. As far as the main stem Colorado is a big river. It has a lot of flow year round, and it has a lot of stream power to just pick this kind of stuff up and move it downstream. So the main stem Colorado isn't as at risk for something like this, but those smaller headwater streams really could be.
Thanks, Bill, for that overview. That makes a lot of sense. Is there any chance you might be able to bring it a little bit closer to home here and speak to either this fire or potential fires in the future?
Yeah, so, when we think about one of these events, which seems pretty catastrophic on a small stream, in the long term, these streams can recover from this. They can push out those sediments, and fisheries can fairly quickly recolonize these areas, 3 to 5 years, maybe a little longer. Insect life comes back a lot quicker than that. So if the stream system in our area has good connectivity, it's not blocked too much by roads, culverts, too much water extraction, so the stream dries up in different reaches. It's, the natural system can reconnect itself over time. A bigger problem in our area is we have conservation cutthroat populations in some of our small headwater streams. And these are populations of genetically old original fish from this area of the Rocky Mountains that are really valuable for their biodiversity. And the potential is that if you have a significant event in one of these small disconnected streams that takes out that whole population, that's a group of organisms that we don't get back over time. It's not like brook trout that can just reinvade and move back up the stream. Some of those populations, once they're gone for good. And then in thinking about impacts to human infrastructure, this is No Name Canyon, this small tributary we're looking at on the left. And this is a community of No Name down there. And these guys are right in the firing line if they have flash flooding, debris flows coming out. The same with Grizzly Creek. This is the Grizzly Creek rest stop in Glenwood Canyon. And that infrastructure for the put-in and whitewater rafting, which is very important economic activity around here, and fishing access, all of that is kind of in the line of fire. And then even closer to home, for the community of Glenwood Springs, No Name and Grizzly Creek are the primary municipal drinking water sources for that city. And that city can take water from the Roaring Fork and some other places, but this really clean, good water that comes out of these small tributaries is their preferred source. And what you're looking at here is kind of a junky satellite photo, but this is the diversion for the city, and then it goes into a tunnel and an aqueduct that goes over to Glenwood Springs. And if you can imagine a big sediment event coming down the watershed, like in some of those other pictures, and coming into the city intake infrastructure, that's a big problem and a very costly problem for these communities to deal with. So keeping an eye on what's happening in the fire in those areas and trying to address it as soon as possible afterwards is hugely important.
All right, once we have a clear understanding of what the impacts are from community leaders and from that burn evaluation, what should our main priorities be as far as mitigating the effects of this fire?
I think once the danger to human life and infrastructure is passed, I imagine these communities are going to be taking a quick and hard look at their water supply infrastructure. That's a top priority. And once we know a bit more about that, I imagine the land managing agencies like Forest Service and BLM are going to be a little more interested in trying to see what we can do about our ecosystems, about recreation infrastructure, and some of those other components of the watershed that we all care about.
Well, thank you so much for your time and all of your expertise and insight, Bill. Thanks also to Lotic Hydrological. We appreciate your partnership and continued expertise throughout this process. We'll keep all of our audience updated as we learn more, and we'll certainly have opportunities to get involved. I'm guessing that whatever efforts we have will require a substantial amount of funding, and we'll be reaching out with some requests. But our main mission right now is to keep everybody in the loop and educated about what we know and what we don't know. Thank you very much.
And please note that in the last couple of days, we have seen the start of additional fires in Eagle County. Any information that is presented in the films in this series translates well to those fires and any others that may come in the future. Thank you for being here with us.